how the minivan saved a $300 million company. All right, let me set the scene for you. It's in the middle of the 70s, the height of the Cold War. U.S. and Russia, I mean, they're not really fighting, but they're thinking about having to fight. Chrysler, the car company, gets contracted to make tanks for the USA. Because tanks are like cars, but with the gun on it, so they can make a tank. So, if anything happened to Chrysler, the U.S. government feared that there would be a large loss of jobs and a hit to the economy, and you kind of need money even if you're in a Cold War. There was also another economic problem, which is that American cars were starting to struggle on the global market. American cars had to deal with the fuel crisis that was going on at the time, and they also were struggling to deal with the new environmental standards raised for cars. So today we'll be talking about how this ugly car helped save the company. Hi, I'm Miles. Today we'll be talking about minivans. Now, it is well known, universally known, minivans, not cool. Today we'll be talking about them, doesn't make them cool. Honestly, in a lot of ways, minivans remind me a lot of Crocs. They're both really ugly, but that hasn't stopped a lot of people from buying them. So, back to the Cold War. In 1979, Chrysler was on the brink of bankruptcy. Chrysler was on the brink of bankruptcy. The next year, in 1980, the U.S. government bailed out Chrysler for $1.5 billion. Chrysler's financial problems started out in the 1960s. So the thing is, Chrysler was a specialized car dealership. They specialized in making really big cars and really big vehicles. So think like full-size vans and recreational vehicles. So gas prices started to climb, and so people didn't really want as many large cars. Their competitors, like Ford and GM, had a larger suite of cars that they sold, so they weren't affected as much by rising gas prices. And especially going into the 70s, Chrysler also had to deal with multiple recessions, so they were trying to both expand into new types of cars and dealing with people not having the money to buy their cars in the first place. Add onto the pile a couple energy crises, maybe tossing in a few environmental standards. Also affects you because you have big cars. That's not even going into like the foreign competition that they were getting from Germany and Japan as they started to sell cars into the US. The international car companies specialized in smaller cars, which were kind of in vogue because of gas. So you add all these factors together, and Chrysler couldn't compete anymore. And because of the things we talked about earlier, like the war and money, the US government decided to bail them out. In drives the minivan. And if we open the door, whoosh, you can see the driver. And by that I mean Chrysler's CEO, Lee Iacocca. Is this Lee Iacocca? Iacocca? Is it for real though? Is it like Iacocca? Okay. Lee Iacocca. So Lee, I'm just gonna say Lee because his last name's too hard. I'm sorry, sir. But Lee came from Ford, but he worked with another guy named Hal Sperlich to make the Mustang. So if I were trying to pick a car that was the furthest you could get away from a minivan, the Mustang would be pretty high on the list. But Ford, and really Lee, thought that they had the market cornered, the upscale market cornered with the Mustang, so they wanted to make a more family car. Vans at the time came typically in about two flavors. You had vans that were more bus-like, and you had vans that were more truck-like. So if you got more than like 3 or 4 people to move, like maybe in a family, you could get a van, or you could get a station wagon. Station wagons were really popular with families, but they had a couple problems. For one thing, it's easier to step up, like into a van, than it is to step down into a low-to-the-ground station wagon. They were also really ugly, which, if you're uglier than a van, then we have a big problem. So we're here on the second day because yesterday the recording got corrupted on the second half. So if we come back to our boy, Lee Iacocca, his reputation got boosted a lot in Ford because he came up with the Mustang, which was it sold pretty good. So he and his boy Sperlich decided to try something new. And in 1974, they decided to try for a car that was a van that drove more like a car. Weird concept. Now, the Ford executives weren't really sure what to think about that because it was a completely new product and they didn't really see a use for it. So Lee decided to keep his pet project literally in the basement of the Ford building. So later on in the 70s, Lee and Spurlock decided to leave Ford to go work for Chrysler. Thankfully, the Ford executives let them take their little pet project, the little minivan, with them to Chrysler. This is right around the time that Chrysler was getting that government bailout and they're in rough straits. So they end up releasing the minivan in 1983. They came out with two versions. The first one was the Plymouth Voyager and the Dodge Caravan, which is the one you probably have heard of before. The minivan sold really well in its first year. They sold over 200,000 cars, which is a good amount of just a minivan. They made so much money that they were able to pay back the government 7 years early. And their debt was pretty big. It was $800 million. So, was bailing out Chrysler a good deal? Because ultimately, we paid for it. Well, I mean, I didn't pay for it because I wasn't born yet. But you, if you were alive and paying taxes, you paid for it. It certainly was a good deal for Chrysler because they were able to recover with the minivan and they were able to ride that for a few decades. They owned 40% of the market in 2001. After 2001, the minivan started to decline and Chrysler with them. Other American car companies started moving more towards trucks and SUVs, and ultimately people ended up preferring crossover SUVs to minivans, probably because they're just better than minivans. On one hand, the Chrysler bailout ended up leading to the minivan, which is pretty good. But on the other hand, Chrysler's gone now. They filed for bankruptcy in 2008, and that time the US government did not bail them out, and they ended up getting bought by Fiat in 2014. So, the question is, which one would you rather have? Would you rather have the innovation of the minivan, or would you rather have more money in your pocket? Personally, I think I would pick the money in my pocket, but let me know how you feel in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more content like this, please let us know in the comments down below. Go ahead and like and subscribe. We also have other places you can follow us. You can follow us on TikTok where we make short videos. Follow us on Instagram where you can see pictures and stuff. We also have social media, so you could always follow us there. Like if you just look into the internet and see the link in our description, then you can follow us on the internet. Check us out at bigred.media. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.